Okay, let me check to make sure we're on. And just let me say this, if you are watching this live or on the replay, make sure that you are in our um on our mailing list. Because if you're not on our mailing list, you're missing out on some extras that we're doing. We've got some extra opportunities as far as the quiz to see if you are doing unhelpful help. We've also got some great printables for you, reminders of who you are and whose you are. So make sure that you are getting that. And then just in case you don't know it, we we also have a YouTube channel, and I've begun live streaming over to the YouTube channel. So, can anyone tell me if they can hear me? I am always struggling with that. Okay, captions are being generated, which means you can hear me. Yay. All right. So this I am really excited about. I'm Tanya Joya. I run the Sober on Purpose podcast. I have a YouTube channel under the same name. And then I also do the Dancing with Joy program. Oh, thank you. I've got an I can hear you. Yay. All right. I appreciate that. This Bowen theory, the family's theory is super important in understanding how a healthy family structure works. So, we're going to talk about that this morning. And it is a theory that it was created and is one of the main family systems theories. And you may not agree with it, and that's okay. Having knowledge lets you do things differently. And that's what's super important about having knowledge. So hang with me. This is not super technical, but it does explain a lot of what's going on in a family dynamic. And it is not the only theory, but it's one that a lot of therapists work with, especially with children in the family and how the family works. And then we're going to take a turn and look at how this works in a family that is experiencing addictive behaviors. So when we turn that corner, we're going to be working with Jeff Van Vonderen's work, Wounded by Shame, Healed by Grace. And last week we talked about grace. Yes, we did talk about grace, but we talked about shame versus guilt. So as we get into this, we'll talk a little bit more about shame versus guilt. So the Bowen theory is widely used in family systems, and it's the understanding that the family is an emotional system. That thoughts, feelings, and actions are felt by all members of the family when that happens. And it's not that your workplace isn't an emotional system, your social group isn't an emotional system. They're all, according to this theory, they're all an emotional system, and they work together. And we're going to talk more about how those work together. In fact, it can feel like you as a family are all living under one emotional skin. So if somebody in the family is having a rotten day, then everybody's having a rotten day. If the addict is the family is having an episode, then everybody's having an episode. So I I haven't found the term that I want to use. So addicted loved one is what I'm going to use, but everybody in the family plays a role in that, and that's what we've been working on all along. If you want the replay on guilt versus shame, that really talks about how everybody plays a role in that, and next week is going to be even deeper into that. So I do want you to stick around, come back and talk to me next Friday. So you feel like you are so close that you are all living under the emotional skin. If you've got a teenager who is sulking around, slamming doors, not coming to dinner, it affects the family. It affects the family in the other way too. I've got a child who absolutely loves the holidays, and it just jumps for joy around any holiday. It could be the 4th of July, it could be Halloween, it could be Easter, it could be any holiday, it could be Labor Day. They're like, let's do something for the holiday. That lifts the family mood too. And we're going to talk about those roles really towards the end and a lot next week about who those people are in the family and how that happens in the family. So we've got this idea that there's a system, And put in the comments if you felt this system at work, that somebody comes home and they've had a really great day and affects the system. Somebody comes home in a really grumpy mood or perpetually struggling mood. And in a family with addictive behaviors, it is often crisis to crisis to crisis. There's a constant worry about when the other shoe is going to drop. So that's how we look at the system to start with. So, what do we do in this system? We get attention, we get approval, and we get support. We also get our needs met, and we have expectations, and we have upsets. So, there's a balance in here. We're reacting to getting attention, approval, support, needs met, and we're also reacting to not having our needs met, setting up expectations that okay, if I'm staying home with the kids, then you're owning most of the money. Or maybe we're both doing halvesies on that and we're both earning equal money. Or maybe you mow the grass and I change the oil. There are expectations with families, and then upsets. We all know about upsets, right? It's something has happened. Maybe we have lost status at work because of our addiction use, or maybe we've lost friendships, or we can no longer be with these friends because we've decided to recover, and going over there, their main activity is using drugs and alcohol, and that's just not a place we can be anymore. So that can change the skin of the family emotional system. Now, as we move a little deeper into this, we looked at connectedness and reactivity. So when I'm looking at all of these little systems, say there's 4 people in the family, right? We're all interconnected. We've talked a little bit about if one thing happens to one person, then things change. There's always a reaction. So in the Bowen theory, if I, as the mom, come home and man, I'm spending the core of my time worried about the addictive behavior of my son or my husband or my parent, then my core is here, but it's really caught up in this person, which changes how this person reacts to me. Now, this person may not have gotten too deep into it yet, but they change as I change. So I'm hitting this reaction. I'm worried about this person. This person is reacting to me, and this person will begin to notice that there are changes happening. So the connectedness and reactivity means we are so connected under this one skin that when something happens to one of us, things happen to the rest of us. As I said, this is not the only emotional system. So if there's an emotional system at work, things are not going well there, and they're bringing that home, that may be the change that is affecting this person, that's affecting this person, that will come around to this person. So, this interdependence means shift in one changes others. And this evolved. We've been talking about this care evolvement over the last several weeks of this evolved to protect the family, shelter and feed those who needed it. It evolved in the Yak Pensac care cycle that we as mammals have a long time to care our young, and so we have to develop a system to do that. There's a positive in this. Our needs are met, we're supported, we're enjoyed as human being. There is also a downside to this. And when this is interdependence on each other, when that gets stressed, when anxiety, stress, demands go up, the efficiency goes down. Because remember, the family unit is designed to protect, shelter, and care for the people inside the unit. But when this anxiety goes up, when an addicted loved one has an episode, when there's a crisis around finances, even things that we want, when there's a new baby born, there is an efficiency that goes down. When that goes down and the connectedness is lost, the family feels this heightened tension and the interdependence begins to break apart. Now, there is often one individual who is the most accommodating in the family, and they absorb the anxiety. So there's anxiety going on, and there's often one person who really is handling this anxiety instead of everybody handling their own. They're handling their anxiety in the Bowman theory model. And what happens to this person, oh, we've jumped ahead. What happens to this person, well, let's go here first. What happens is the stress happens in the family, okay? This used to be a comfortable, safe place, and then there is this dysfunction, and we've talked about it before that if there's a dysfunction, if there's, uh, addiction behavior going on and you notice it and the person is really not wanting to deal with that, then they may call it out as you're the problem. I wouldn't have to drink so much if you treated me better, or I wouldn't have to drink so much if things were organized around the house. Or, hey, it's really hard at school and it's hard at home. And so I use to get out of that. Or, yeah, I'd rather stay at work because when I come home, all you do is nag and complain and get all on my case. So when that stress begins to happen, then this comfort and safe leaves the family unit. And there is, as I was saying, normally one person that is the absorption of the system stress. This person often is left vulnerable because they're absorbing the stress. They might not be taking care of everything. They're just absorbing the stress. It can be a child, it can be another adult member of the family, and this leaves them really vulnerable to illness, addiction, affairs. Okay, so when they are in this family system and it breaks down even before addictive behavior starts, so that's why we see this breakdown happening and this generational addictive behavior. If what they've seen is to cope with your stress is leave your partner, get a new partner, things will be better for a little while, or use this substance and you will feel better. And I have to tell a story on myself. I was so so I think I've mentioned this a little bit before. I love chocolate. I really love chocolate. And there is, a chemical reaction. It's a dopamine raiser, right? It's a serotonin uplifter. And I've shifted my chocolate use basically down to unsweetened chocolate, but it still is used. But prior to doing that, we were having tension in the family. It was very stressed. I can't remember who I was arguing with, but it wasn't my oldest son. And to my embarrassment, and I've gone back and corrected this, I was angry and upset, and I went into the kitchen and I grabbed the bag of chocolate chips and I am just shoveling them in my mouth. I'm trying to feel better. This is no different. Let's get it where it really is. This is no different than me taking a couple drinks, finding some weed, going to my office and just working and working and working. This is all the same thing. I'm abandoning myself. I'm abandoning my people, and I'm not doing something. I'm doing something to solve the problem. Let's get it where it is, but I'm not doing something healthy to soothe myself and reconstruct what needs to change. Okay, or to even calm down, to meditate, to pull myself back into my feelings. I am eating my feelings. Let's be real aware of this. So I'm standing in my kitchen. I've pulled the chocolate chips out of the cabinet. I'm shoveling them in my mouth by handfuls, right? By handfuls, I'm putting them in there. My son comes in. He's frustrated. So we must have been frustrated with other members of the family. He's frustrated. And I look at him and I say, "This is how you handle this." Is anybody is anybody surprised? I'd love comments on this if you have done this. This is how you handle this. I am teaching my child to stuff his feelings. I am teaching my child to use substance to cover his feelings. Yes, it's sugar. Sugar, I think, is one of the most dangerous, socially acceptable drugs there is out there. It is mood altering. It shifts things. And so I am teaching him to do this instead of dealing with what the real issue is, to walk away and to use some substance to solve this issue. And you may say, "Oh, Tanya, that's not such a big deal. That's just sugar. You're just trying to make yourself feel better." Well, what my son called me out on several months later, maybe even a year later, is I said something about how much sugar he was eating. And he said, "Yeah, you, you try and leave chocolate alone. Try and walk away from chocolate." And, I was nailed. I was nailed. So if we let this stress in and this one person, whether it be myself or you or somebody else, what's happening is we're putting a lot of rocks in our backpack. Oh, I'm worried about my child. I'm worried about my husband's work. I'm worried about my own work. I'm worried about what's happening over at the school. Is the economy going to be okay? So just think about loading all these rocks in your backpack. You're loading all these rocks in your backpack and you're draining your battery. You're feeling tired and slumped and draining your battery, and that you're living with this unspoken rule. And we talked about this in Shame and Guilt. You're living with this unspoken rule that you're not good enough, you're not talented enough, you're not capable enough to manage this. So you have to reach out for something else to help you manage it. So that's what happens in the breakdown of the family system. The protection, the love, the care, the stresses come in. And instead of turning in to the family system, supporting each other, working through these issues, maybe we don't even have the skills to do that. Maybe that's way too much skill level for us. And it takes some skills to manage this, not only your self skills, but also skills in the family to manage this. Instead of doing that, one person is absorbing all of this, which is leaving them very vulnerable. So, what's happening is when we talk about this is there are 8 in the Bowen theory, there are 8 interlocking opportunities that are going on. And as we're looking at it, we're looking mainly at a couple things. We're not going to go through the whole process. You can look this up on YouTube. There's some great things going on, but we're going to look at emotional triangles. We're going to look at self-differentiation, multi-generation transmission, and then this emotional cutoff. There are all of these other issues, but these are the basic ones we're going to talk about, especially in the addictive family behavior situation. And one of the things that happens in this when it goes awry in the addictive family situation is we are constantly looking for acceptance and approval. And to do that, we often people please. And as a child, we do need to follow the structures of our parents and to conform. But as we get the pressure to conform, we keep doing this performance. What kind of dance do I have to do to get the hug? And if I do that correctly, then will you give me approval? Will you give me love? Will you keep me safe? That is not God's design for the family. God's design for the family is for it to be an agape love situation, an unconditional love situation. So this is where people pleasers are born. And think back in your own childhood, think back in your family of origin. Where did you have to conform so that you would get approval? And I can guarantee, as a parent myself, your parents were doing the best they could. You, as a parent, are doing the best you could. But once you become aware of this, you begin to look at it. And when we were talking about guilt and shame, shame is I am bad. Guilt is I have done something. I have done a behavior that is outside of my norms and values, right? So when we are being given performance love, if we don't perform, what happens? We aren't given love. Then what? Then we keep upping our performance and upping our performance. But at some point, we may hit an unwritten rule of I'm darned if I do and darned if I don't, and we just quit, right? So that causes stress in the family. Now, self differentiation is what happens when that child says, I am not mom, I am not dad, I need to be me. And if the family system is not ready for that, then there is a whole lot of pressure to conform. And so they may start living a secret life outside of what the family is. We've certainly seen a lot of kids raised in what we would call good homes who go on to really make a mess of their life, whether it's addiction, whether it's finding the wrong partner, whether it's with just high pressures at work, or whether it's just disappearing. Some of that is based on this unwritten rule of, hey, even when I perform, I don't get the response and there isn't any love here. So it really doesn't matter what I do. I should just go do what I want to do. And they haven't differentiated themselves enough to say, my life is important no matter who approves or disapproves. So think about that in your own life of people pleasing, acceptance, approval, all of those spaces. Now, when we look at what are the pressures in the nuclear family, part of it is that allowing the children to self-differentiate, allowing the spouse to self-differentiate. I may not like everything that you like, and that's okay. We don't have to do everything together to know that we love and care about each other. So that's part of the marital conflict. And sex and money are the biggest ones in there. Then there may be an impairment of one spouse, and we're going to talk about. So hang out. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Impairment of one spouse, and that's where the isms come in: alcoholism, workaholism, overdoing the gym, affairs, all those types of things. And then there may be impairment of a child, that they are either not able to self-differentiate, there's a learning disability, there's something going on in there that it puts stress on the family. And then there's the emotional distance. So when you get the emotional distance is when people close off instead of coming together as a family unit. Now, the family projection process is when you have this real big need for attention and expectations of others, and you've been taught either you're responsible for somebody or they are responsible for you, and you over caretake. We've talked about that a lot with unhelpful help or enabling. So we project onto them either our heightened need for approval, or that they are difficult because we're having a difficult time, or you didn't meet my expectations. I expected to stay home and you work, or I expected to work and you stay home, and we're doing neither of that. Or those unwrittens of children are not to have opinions and they're to be seen and not heard. You may have grown up in that situation. So we are looking to others to set up our happiness. And that's when this system becomes dysfunctional, is when we start projecting, when the stress comes in and we don't manage it, and then when we don't differentiate. So as I said, the Bowman theory, you can go back and look that up on YouTube, get even clearer on what that is. But that leaves us with, so what's happening in the addicted behavior family? So in the family, everybody has a job, right? So sometimes it's the person who is handling the finances, sometimes it's the person who's handling the home, sometimes those are divided. The kids are there as a growing part of the family. They're learning and growing, differentiating. There's often the person who is very funny and the person who is able to bring everybody back to reality. And, everybody has a job in this family. Some of them can be very specific, like I mow the grass and you change the oil. So we all have a job. And this is part of the connectedness that is going on. But what happens when somebody decides they can no longer do their job? Well, as we've talked about in another space, if this is something that is short term, or even if it's long term, but we know the change is going to happen. So in military families, person goes away for a little while, the other spouse has to pick up everything, and then the person comes back and they pick their jobs back up. Kind of the same with addiction behavior. If your person gets well, then they come back into the family and they're expected to pick up their roles again, except for when the family doesn't feel comfortable with that. So in a healthy family style, every family has problems. Everyone gets a chance in the middle, and the other people pick up their job. So instead of just mowing the grass, I'm going to figure out how to change the oil. I'm going to get the kid to the dentist because I know right now that my husband needs a lot more time at his work. So I'm picking up some of that slack. But he's going to come back out, and I've got a child with a sore ankle and a hurt thumb, and he's going to pop in the middle, and we're going to take some extra care of him. So we've talked about this a little bit before on how this healthy family shift happens, right? So the healthy family shift happens, but what happens is when a healthy family still has problems, just like we were talking about, but what happens when that person gets stuck in the middle? So, what happens in a family with addictive behaviors? Um, we don't continue doing that quality time. If we notice there's addictive behaviors, we become the problem. So as we look at this person gets stuck in the middle. So others pick up the jobs. Now the family is less efficient, but they want to keep staying efficient. They want to look like they're okay at church, at the grocery store, at the PTO meeting. Everything's okay. So that one person, often that one person that has absorbed all the stress is the person who is picking up all the all the falling pieces. We've got to have groceries. We've got to have money coming in. The cars need to run. So this person in the middle, whether it be a child or an adult, is absorbing a lot of attention. And truly, they don't even have to be there to absorb all that attention. Okay. They can be someplace else. So this can often cause what happens in the Bowman cycle, a triangle. So in a triangle, there's two people that are bonded. Maybe it's mom and daughter who are taking care of everything, they're managing everything, and dad is on the outside because he is having an affair, he's using substance, he's overworking at work. It could be father and son, it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be this setup. So this creates anxiety for the insiders who want to stay on the inside. They form this bond, especially with a child. They feel important. And the outsider is constantly trying to get in, constantly trying to say, hey, why am I not part of the family? Why am I not in this group? Why am I not able to make decisions? And that, if that's true for you, put that in the comments that you've had insiders and outsiders in your family. Are you an insider or an outsider? And we can be in multiple different triangles at once, but this creates the anxiety that the Bowman system is talking about. So when that person gets stuck, then we create these triangles, and then here's the thing, we start blaming that person or persons who are stuck in substance, work, food, tech. As the outside person, we start scapegoating them for everything. That's the shift I need you to hear. We start scapegoating them for everything. When we start scapegoating them for everything, then we've set our hopes. Here's what gets really strange. We have set our hopes on, hey, if they get well, then everything will be fine. And having worked in this field long enough, it isn't. Because guess what? Our roles have shifted. We have this person who is stuck in the middle. We've taken on extra roles over here, and over here. And this should probably be a sad face. Maybe all of them should be sad faces. We've taken on extra roles. We have a scapegoat. Okay, think about that. You have a scapegoat. I don't have to think about me and my problems because your problems are so big. I can push everything that's going wrong with me onto you. Hear that really loud and clear. So I don't have to think about my own personal growth. I don't have to think about my own personal resources. I don't have to think about what I need to do. I am just focused around that middle so that I'm making that work. In fact, I might even try and keep setting up the environment so that that works better. I'm pouring out the alcohol. I'm calling the police. I'm telling the boss that we just can't have him work that hard. I'm making sure that we are sitting down for dinner. I'm making sure that we have family time together, no matter how painful it is. So we just keep picking up these jobs, and we keep creating these unspoken rules of, oh, your brother can't do that and your dad can't do that, and we need to protect him from this, and we need to make sure it's okay out there. So just like I was teaching my child to solve problems with sugar, you're teaching your children that this person, or you're teaching the other spouse that this person in the middle is incapable of handling their lives. And you're saying, I am more capable. In fact, I'm the person that's going to save the ship. So if we go back a couple slides, if you are that person, what do you feel like? You're absorbing all the stress, you're often taking care of all the jobs. And then, as we know, all of these systems, there's more than just one person in the system. Everybody has a job to do. So these jobs have changed into dysfunction. So let's talk about what that looks like. So when these jobs have changed into dysfunction, you begin to get a system that looks like this. The scapegoat might be the person who is using, but it might also be a child. If they would just act right, then we would be able to get along. If they would have better grades, then we would be okay. If we didn't, I've heard this in marriages over and over again. We couldn't have a marriage because our child was getting bad grades, getting into drugs, disabled, whatever it was. We couldn't work through that. So you are scapegoating your personal issues. And this is where we talk in the Dancing with Joy program of, how do you want to show up? What do you want your identity to be? How do you want to have clarity around your life? Look at what your responsibilities are and set up a structure that works for you. So that's the Dancing with Joy program, is looking at your role in all of this. So this chief enabler in an addictive family situation is not normally a child. It is normally an adult, or a child who is able to function like an adult. They're the ones who make sure there's groceries in the fridge, who the bills get paid, the mortgage, the rent, all those types of things. I once had a friend say to me, very smart, very capable. He said, there was at no time during my addiction that I didn't have money to pay my bills. I just wasn't able to function to do it. I forgot, or I didn't reorder checks, or I didn't make this happen. He was never homeless. He was never out on the street. He was always able to afford cars, houses, dates, all those types of things, but he just couldn't function to do it. So this chief enabler may be working with a high functioning person who is dealing with addiction, but they are enabling the addiction to continue to happen, because if they allowed things to be as they were, to really show up and show up for themselves and say, I'm not calling in sick for you anymore, I'm not doing your appointments anymore, if you have a car crash, I'm not going to be there to bail you out. And there are reasons that we continue to do this, especially financial reasons. But when you pull away the enabling, and we'll go back with the definition, unhelpful help is doing something for someone that they could or should do for themselves, or that they don't want done in the first place. So this enabling offers the addicted person the opportunity to continue. And that's one thing we do in the Dancing with Joy program, is look at, how do we reduce harm and find our self-identity, clarify what we need, and where we are giving unhelpful help. So this chief enabler, and then we've also got the mascot. This is the person that makes us laugh. This is the person that says, oh, I'm going to make this fun and enjoyable, and I don't care what you guys do. They they throw food at dinner and everybody starts laughing, or they're the one that walks around with a funny face, or they wear costumes all the time, or they show up and they start talking to the dog in a funny voice. They're the person that lightens things up. Now, we can all be this person, but often it gets layered into one person. And what they're doing is they are lightening the family up, but they're also denying their feelings. And they feel like it is their job to make everything okay. They're not quite a peacemaker, but they're the one that yank us out of that difficult emotional feeling, but nothing gets healed. We just laugh at it. And this is often where comedians come from, is their family situation has been so difficult that they had to turn it into something funny to heal themselves. And as an adult, they can begin to work through it. The next person is the family hero. So if we're raising the family efficiency, then we need a hero. We need somebody who is doing the captain of the football, making great grades, really powering through an Iron Man. This family hero lets us look at the family in dysfunction and say, hey, we're not that bad. We're okay. It's not that big of a deal. Right? So we can look at ourselves and say, we're going to be okay because first son or mom or somebody who has stepped up is going to pull us out of it. So I've also known another family to where husband had such deep depression, wasn't willing to work through the process, that she went to work and made sure there was food on the table. Now, did this need to be done for a little while? Yes. So we're back to this understanding of, yes, stuck in the middle, but was it okay to be stuck in the middle for 10, 15, 20 years? That's something that only the family can decide, but in most families, that's an unhealthy place to be. And then we have the lost child. So think in your family of who is the person when things get stressful, they just disappear. They totally disappear. So when you look at all of these functions, these are the things that happen in a dysfunctional family. And they may take on different people, but often they center on one person. And what happens is, say the hero leaves the family. They go off to college, they go off and get married, they're doing their job, they've left the family, right? Well, there's a position open. So suddenly the scapegoat or the lost child may come into being the hero. You don't have to stay in one job, but what we know is when there's a job opening, you will move to the one that feels better. The mascot, the hero, often feels better. The enabler sometimes never gets out of that role. And here's another piece about that is when the addictive family begins to get well and that person who has been struggling with the addiction comes back and tries to take over some of their jobs again, the enabler might become very angry. They've been doing this for this long. They know how it should be done. You're going to mess it up. You're going to be in the wrong place because guess what? They're out of a job. Nobody wants to be out of work. And when you're out of a job, even if it's an icky job, you don't feel connected. You don't feel like you have a place in the family. So it's a huge shift in what's going on. And these are the roles that can happen in that dysfunctional family. Now, in one of our last ones, we talked about the model for change. And there has to be some thinking about the change. So we often look at this with the person who's dealing with addictive behaviors themselves, but it's really about the family too. If the family gets on board, does the pre-contemplation and the contemplation, and then the preparation, and then the action, right? If they do all of that, what I've been saying and what is statistically proven, it is much more likely that the person with the addictive behavior will stay in a healthy state for the rest of their lives. It's when you drop a person into this, when they've done the work on the change model, but the family's not prepared, it can look like this. So they've done all the work. Here's the family over here doing what it's always done. And they're over here singing Kumbaya. Everything's okay. We're a happy family. We've got this person off doing their own thing, but they're not dealing with their own issues. This is a lie. This is a lie if the family has not walked into this change model too. What they are celebrating is that They have relieved the tension for the moment. The person with the addictive behavior has stepped away, has done what they needed to do. They've relieved the tension from the moment. But to bring that person back into the circle, back into the family dynamic, is going to take some more work. That's where I keep encouraging women to get prepared. When your child, when your husband, when your brother, when your daughter, when your sister, when whoever gets sober, they're going to need a new role in the family, and you don't want to return here. Right? You don't wanna return here. Nobody needs to be stuck in any of these roles, even in the hero role. Nobody needs to be stuck there because, man, the hero can get tired too. They can look just like our battery person. They come home and say, "I didn't score the touchdown. I didn't do the straight A's. I didn't make the money that I thought I was gonna make." And they are exhausted. Right? If you're the enabler, the hero, the mascot, the lost child, the scapegoat, you get exhausted no matter what because the stress is so high. Instead of having this comfort and safety, instead of being able to move in and out of roles as a healthy family does. So let's go back to a healthy family. Healthy family, everybody has a job, right? Healthy family still has problems, but this red person would move out, the blue person would move in, the blue person moves out, green person moves in. So everybody still has the opportunity to be loved and cared about and supported in the family. So as we move back over here, let me get my slides back in the right place. So as we move back over here, what's happening as this person gets well is they're not let back in the family. It's so sad. They are stuck. They're like, "Okay, I've done what I needed to do. I changed and I did these things, and now there's still anger going on in the family. You still have the lost child, you still have the confused person, you have the brokenness going on in the family." And this is often where the person who has recovered from addicted behavior says, I can't spend Christmas with you. I can't be at holidays with you because this stuff is still going on. It is not this. It's not this kumbaya circle if the family has not prepared. They're not over there all loving, happy, and enjoying each other. They might be for a little while because the crisis has passed, but really, all the things that were going on before, if the family has not prepared, if the family has not walked through the change model, it's all happening, and you've still got this lost person. You've still got these warring factions. Maybe mom and dad are still using whatever. Maybe there still is some real brokenness going on in the family. And then you've got the person who has recovered going, "I don't know that I can be with y'all. I don't know that this is a place that I feel comfortable in." So that's where working with the family is so important. That's where family, you are not, let me speak directly to you. You are not powerless. You can make changes. You can increase the efficiency of the family, and you can be a loving, caring family for generations to come. But it can't just focus on this one person. Can't focus on just this one person because this is not really happening in the family. So let's get to the reality of this. When you are looking at this, when you touch one part of this mobile, and I don't know if it'll do its dance. That's not what I wanted it to do. When you touch one part of this mobile, it shifts everything. So, as the addicted person moves into healing, which is what you want, right? Moves into healing, starts working on themselves. Guess what? You need to start working on yourself too to be ready for the changes that are happening. You've prayed, you've asked, you've talked to people, you've looked, you've nagged, you've kicked, you've screamed, you've shamed, you've done all those things. But if you're not ready, when they move back in, it is, and even if they don't physically move back in, it's gonna look like this, or it's gonna look like this. I can't get back in. I don't know how this functions anymore. It's the sad thing of a mother saying of a adult daughter saying to her mother, "You're no fun anymore now that you're not drinking." That means I can't welcome you back in the circle because this is such a big part of my life that you can't be there. Now, I'm not saying, and we've talked about this in other places, I'm not saying that everybody has to stop everything, right? There are people who can drink responsibly. There are people who can work responsibly. There are people who can eat responsibly. It's looking at the family dynamic and how does it function? How does it manage everybody having a job? And are people getting stuck? That's the difference. So here's a key I want to leave you with today. Not only look at who you are or who you have been and the jobs you have taken over. So this is a big deal, right? But also look at affirming messages about the person. So, even when you are setting boundaries in your family, even when you are saying no to behaviors, you can consistently affirm the person. Because what do we know? We are divinely created, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. No matter what we do, we are always loved. Now, humans are not always able to do that, but God is always able to do that. So, I want you to know that you're beloved, you are valuable, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. So, as we look at how this family gets into dysfunction, it is the overwhelm of stress, not managing the stress well, turning to outside substances for managing stress, or controlling the situation. If I control you to do what I need you to do, then I can feel safe. Therefore, it is totally my responsibility to manage you, me, and everybody else in the family. When we get that level of stress, then we start giving messages of if you don't do or perform in the way that I expect, I can't love you. That's when you know the family is headed into an unhealthy situation. In a healthy situation, yes, there are still problems. The mortgage needs to be paid. Sometimes there are breakdowns at work. Sometimes the car breaks down, but you're giving affirming messages about the person while saying no to the behavior, or you're giving affirming messages about the person while solving the problem. So, again, I'm Tanya. As you know, in this group, I would love to chat with you. And we do have a quiz about unhelpful help. So, if you are interested in taking that quiz, put quiz in the comments below. We will send that over and you can gauge for yourself whether you are offering too much help and running down your batteries, or whether you are at the right place, or what needs to shift in your life so that you are not stuck in one of these dysfunctional models.